A silent sidewalk, a black man in a sharp suit simply waiting for his ride. But a prejudiced cop sees something different and decides tonight's the night to flex his authority. A fist flies, handcuffs snap on. For a fleeting moment it seems injustice has won again. Here's the twist though. He just attacked the mayor. And now, everything shifts. This isn't just about a rogue officer. It's about a system laid bare by the very man it tried to crush. A clash of pride, bias, and political consequences is about to erupt. Trust me, what you call justice might fall short. Before we jump in, leave a comment below. Share where you're watching from and what time it is there. We love seeing our community unite from coast to coast. Now, smash that like button, subscribe, and buckle up. This story hits hard.
It was a calm evening in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, the kind of night that draped the town in quiet, where even the breeze seemed to whisper softly through the trees. Streetlights cast a warm amber glow on the cobblestone paths, stretching shadows across the brick storefronts of the historic district. At this hour, the town was nearly deserted. With only the occasional headlights cutting through and the faint hum of crickets, James Carter stood alone at the corner of Washington and Elm, outside Harper's Rare Books, the town's oldest bookstore, long shuttered for the night. He adjusted his beige suit jacket's cuffs, checked his watch, then glanced at the dark shop window, reflecting his weathered yet poised figure. His salt and pepper hair was neatly cropped, his stance upright, his face unreadable, somewhere between weary and pensive. He checked his phone again. No new texts. His assistant, Michael, was running late. James didn't mind the wait. Not much. After years in courtrooms and lately the campaign trail, a few extra minutes alone were no bother. But something felt off tonight. Maybe it was the chill clinging to his neck. Or perhaps it was that deep instinct, honed from years of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, just for the color of his skin. He'd come to pick up a signed memoir. The bookstore manager had agreed to leave it with Michael earlier, but plans changed. Traffic snarled, leaving James alone on a quiet street, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights and the occasional neon flicker from the square. Then he heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, pounding against the brick. James didn't need to look to know it wasn't Michael. "Hey," a voice snapped from behind. He turned slowly, slipping his phone into his pocket. A white police officer, maybe early 40s, approached from across the street, hand resting near his duty belt. His posture, the set of his jaw, the tilt of his head. It wasn't curiosity. It was suspicion. James had seen it too many times. "What are you doing here?" the officer demanded, eyeing James from head to toe. James replied calmly, "Waiting for someone." The officer stopped a few feet away, boots spread wide. "Waiting this late, outside a closed shop?" "My assistant's dropping something off," James said. A pause hung between them. Then the officer stepped closer. James stayed still. "Got ID on you?" the officer asked, his tone sharp, already leaning toward conflict. James exhaled slowly. "I'm not doing anything wrong. No need for that." The officer's brow tightened. "It's a simple question. Loitering here in this part of town? Looks suspicious." James's jaw tensed, but his voice stayed level. "This part of town? You don't exactly fit in, sir. Sure you're not up to something?" There it was. James didn't respond immediately. He met the officer's gaze, not with defiance, but with the steady look of a man who knew exactly what was unfolding and how quickly it could spiral. "I'm not loitering. I'm standing here. That's not a crime." "Not yet," the officer muttered. His hand gripped his flashlight, not to use it, but to make a point. James stepped back slightly, not from fear, but to keep some distance. "This isn't necessary. I said I'm waiting for someone." "You keep saying that," the officer shot back, voice low. "But I don't see a ride, do I?" James nodded toward the road. "He's late. That's it." The tension thickened, like the calm before a storm. The officer stared, lips curling into a smirk with no trace of humor, only challenge. The kind that says, "I don't buy it, and I don't have to." "You're trying real hard to look important, dressed up like that," he said. Something stirred in James's chest. He'd worn this suit to speak at a veterans fundraiser earlier, shaking hands with donors, comforting widows, delivering a speech on service and legacy. That was just 2 hours ago, but it meant nothing now. Not to this man. The officer stepped closer, now inches from James. "I don't like your attitude," James said firmly, "and I don't like being harassed." That was it. The officer's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "I don't need a reason to detain someone if I feel threatened. You're pushing it." James held his ground. He had every right to be there. But in that moment, rights felt flimsy, like they could vanish with a flick of a wrist or a swing of a baton. He glanced down the street. No headlights, no Michael, just the streetlight, brick walls, cold wind, and the officer, hand now hovering over his handcuffs. James's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "You're making a mistake." The officer tilted his head. "We'll see." In that quiet, under Willow Creek's sleepy sky, the silence turned heavy, the kind that signals something about to shatter. James didn't flinch, not when the officer leaned closer, not when his hand lingered over the cuffs like a threat. He'd faced too much to back down, but the air grew tighter. Every second eroded civility. It wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about control. "You think a fancy suit makes you somebody?" the officer sneered. "Think you're too big to answer questions?" James's jaw tightened. His voice stayed calm, but there was iron in it. "I told you who I am. I told you what I'm doing. That's enough." The officer's eyes narrowed. "It's not." James saw it coming now. Not just the aggression, but the arrogance fueling it, unchecked by accountability. The officer didn't care about truth. He wanted submission. "Let's get one thing straight," the officer said, his voice heavy with threat. "You don't decide when this ends." "I do." "I'm not resisting," James replied. "I'm on a public sidewalk. I've broken no law." "Is that so?" the officer hissed. "Then show me some ID." James stared for a long moment, then said quietly, "No." The words sparked like flint. The officer's mouth twisted into a sneer. "No? You've got no cause, just a bad hunch based on who you think I am." "I know what I see," the officer snapped. "You're stalling, hiding something." James shook his head. "I've told you everything. You're just not listening." That snapped the last thread of restraint. "You want to play games? Let's play." Without warning, the officer grabbed James's arm, his grip harsh, yanking him forward. Pain shot through James's shoulder. "Don't touch me," James barked, pulling back instinctively. "You crossed the line," the officer growled, twisting James's arm harder. "You're resisting." "I said don't touch me," James shouted, his voice rising from pain and disbelief. "You can't do this." The officer's face was blank, like a man locked into his next move. He yanked the handcuffs from his belt and shoved James against the bookstore's brick wall. The rough brick scraped James's cheek, his hands pinned awkwardly behind him. "Let go," James struggled, fighting panic, clinging to composure, but the pain made it impossible. "You're hurting me." The officer leaned in, his breath hot with anger. "I told you to stop resisting." James winced as the cuffs clicked on. Tight, too tight. The officer's knee pressed into his legs, forcing him down. But James held firm. "You're assaulting me," he gasped. "I've done nothing but stand here." "You think you're above the law?" the officer barked. "Not tonight." Then, in a brutal flash, it happened. A fist, sharp, swift, slammed into James's jaw. The blow exploded through his head, his vision blurred, his knees buckled, the world tilting. Pain radiated from his jaw, down his neck, behind his eyes. His ears rang. He didn't collapse, not fully. His back slid down the wall, one hand caught in the cuff, the other dangling. His mouth opened, but no words came, just a ragged breath. The officer didn't look shocked. If anything, he looked smug, justified. Had to do it the hard way, huh? He muttered coldly. James steadied himself, pain flaring, blood mixing with saliva. He swallowed hard. "You'll regret this," he said, voice low but firm. "Doubt it," the officer shot back. "People like you never learn." People like you. That cut deeper than the punch. James had faced wars, courts, protests, politics. But that phrase, spoken so casually, like it was fact, like it was earned, stung hard. The officer yanked him from the wall, shoving him toward the curb. "Get down," he ordered. James stumbled, barely catching himself before his knees hit the ground. His wrists throbbed from the tight cuffs, his body aching, humiliated, exposed. He sat, breathing hard, as bystanders froze nearby, unsure of what they saw. "Next time," the officer said, towering over him, "remember who's in charge." James looked up, the streetlight casting a grim glow on the officer's face. But James wasn't scared. He was furious, calm, and certain. "Before you toss me in that car," he said slowly, "check my ID." The officer paused, blinking, confused. "What?" "You heard me," James said. "Check my ID." The officer scoffed. "You had your chance." "Maybe," James said, lifting his chin, blood trickling from his lip. "But you'll want to see it now." The officer hesitated, then reached into James's jacket pocket, pulling out his wallet and flipping it open. He tugged out the ID card, squinted, blinked, then froze, eyes wide. Silence swallowed the street. He looked from the card to James, his face paling. "That's right," James said quietly. The ID's badge gleamed. "Mayor of Willow Creek." The officer stammered. "Sir, I didn't know." James cut him off. "You didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You assumed." "You did," James said, sharper now. "You profiled me. You attacked me. You cuffed me. For what?" The officer's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the ID, as if it might change. It didn't. The weight of his actions settled in. Bystanders now had phones out, recording. James turned his head, jaw aching, wrists burning, but his voice was rock steady. "You just punched the mayor," he said, "in front of witnesses." The officer's hands shook as he fumbled with the handcuff key. James didn't move. He watched, waited. The storm was just starting. The cuffs clicked open, metal giving way, but the sting in James's wrists lingered, as did the pain in his jaw. The officer stepped back fast, avoiding James's gaze, as if distance could erase what he'd done. James stood slowly, every move deliberate, spine straight, face unreadable. The streetlight flickered, unsure of the moment. "Sir," the officer started, but James raised a hand, not threatening, but commanding. "Don't," he said. "Not now." The silence stretched. Moments ago, one had all the power. Now, the roles flipped, and it showed. The officer's mouth moved uselessly, like a man realizing he'd stepped into history's wrong side. James spat blood and saliva onto the sidewalk, then adjusted his suit jacket, brushing off dust, staring at his attacker with a gaze sharper than words. "You don't know the night you just kicked off," James said, voice low, resolute. The officer swallowed hard. I didn't know who you were." James stepped forward, not to intimidate, but to dismantle the excuse. "You didn't care who I was. That's the difference." More people gathered, drawn by the tension, the flashing lights, the sense that something big had gone wrong. Phones recorded, streamed, capturing a moment no one could hide. "You profiled me," James continued. "You attacked me without cause. You treated me like a criminal. And now you're shaking because I'm not who you thought." The officer looked rattled, hands hovering near his belt. "Sir, please, let me explain." James raised an eyebrow, his tone cutting. "Explain? To the press? The council? My daughter? The city attorney? The veterans who backed my campaign? No, officer. You'll get plenty of chances to explain soon." The officer's eyes darted, searching for an escape from the spiraling moment. But James wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and with calm precision, snapped a photo of the officer, the patrol car, the streetlight, the shattered evening. "You'll hear from me," he said, "and this time it'll be in court, not on a sidewalk." He turned and walked away, each step ringing like a gavel on the pavement. The officer didn't follow. Couldn't. He stood frozen, the weight of his actions chasing him harder than any pursuit in uniform. James's legs ached, but he didn't show it. His jaw throbbed, but his face stayed composed, his stride steady. He passed a bystander, an older black woman in a headscarf and coat, who looked at him with horror and pride. "God bless you, sir," she whispered. He gave a small nod. "Not me. This whole city." He rounded the corner, leaving the flashing lights and shattered assumptions behind, and pulled out his phone. His fingers trembled, not with fear, but fury, as he dialed. The line clicked, and a familiar voice answered. "Mayor Carter?" "Michael," James said. "Where are you?" "Sorry, sir. 2 blocks away." "Traffic, forget it," James cut in. "Meet me at City Hall. Now." "Sir, you okay?" James paused. "I'm not hurt beyond reason, but we've got a problem, and it's time to face it head on." He hung up, his breath visible in the cold night air. Walking through Willow Creek's quiet streets, memories surged. Protest lines, fire hoses, marches in Birmingham, facing down rifles and hostile glares. He hadn't survived all that to be slammed against a brick wall by a man blind to truth. City Hall's steps loomed like a challenge. He climbed them slowly, feeling the bruises and the fire in his chest. The building stood tall, floodlit, its columns casting shadows across the marble plaza. Michael paced nervously by the doors, freezing when he saw James's face. "My God," he breathed. "What happened?" James pushed past, opening the door. "Come inside, I'll explain." The warmth hit him, but it didn't soothe. Not yet. He strode down the corridor, past framed photos of past mayors, awards, news clippings of his election. All he'd built, all his community backed, undone in 5 brutal minutes. In his office, he stopped, turning to Michael. "I was stopped, questioned, harassed, punched, cuffed." Michael looked stunned. "By who?" "A patrol officer. Didn't know me. Didn't care to. Saw a black man in a suit on a sidewalk and decided I was trouble." Michael's fists clenched. "What's the plan?" James's eyes were cold, focused. "What we should have done long ago. We act." "Go public?" Michael asked. James nodded. "Press conference, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Call the city attorney. Get the council. Every local reporter needs to be there." Michael stepped closer, voice soft. "You sure?" "Once this goes out, no turning back." James nodded slowly. "Good. I'm not letting this happen again. Not to me, not to anyone." He sat at his desk, jaw pain flaring as he leaned forward. No wince, no flinch. He stared at a blank notebook, then grabbed a pen. His first line wasn't legal or strategic. It was personal. This is where it starts. By dawn, the photo was viral. A blurry cell phone shot from across the street, clear enough to show the truth. James Carter, suit rumpled, face bruised, jaw set. Behind him, the officer, still unnamed, stood frozen, confusion and dread on his face. The moment was captured, raw, undeniable, hitting Willow Creek like a shockwave. Social media exploded before breakfast. Hashtags trended. #1, mayor attacked. #1, justice for James. #1, our mayor. Influencers shared the image. Civil rights groups amplified it. Regional news ran headlines like fiction. Willow Creek mayor handcuffed, punched by cop. National outlets flooded City Hall with calls. James sat in his office, staring at the screen, silent. No press statements yet. No filters. No PR spin. This wasn't politics. It was personal. He'd spent a lifetime learning to hold his tongue, play the game, survive by not fueling the fire. That chapter was done. His bruise purpled. His wrist bore cuff marks. The city demanded answers, and he'd give them on his terms. Michael knocked, stepping in, phone in hand. "It's chaos out there," he said. "They want you on CNN, NBC, even international outlets. Everyone wants a quote." James didn't look up. Not until 10. "Still doing the press conference outside?" "I want them to see it all," James said. "The building, my face, the people behind me. This isn't just about me. It's about what keeps happening and how we've let it slide." Michael nodded and left. James stayed still, eyes on a photo above his desk. His first day as mayor, shaking hands with the fire chief, smiling, untouched. Now he looked battle-worn because he was. His phone buzzed. Not press. It was Sarah, his daughter, voice tight with worry. "Dad, you okay?" He closed his eyes briefly. "I'm fine." "You're not. I saw the video, the bruise." "I've had worse," he said softly. "This one just got caught on camera." A pause, her breathing audible. "You want me there?" He smiled faintly. "You don't have to ask." By 10 a.m., City Hall's steps were packed with microphones, cameras, and over 100 people. Citizens, reporters, activists, off-duty firefighters, nurses, standing shoulder to shoulder. Some held signs, others stood, arms crossed, watching. James stepped out, Sarah on his right, Michael on his left. He paused at the podium, letting the crowd's murmur fade, facing a city finally waking up. He took a deep breath. "I wasn't going to speak at first," he said, voice calm, resonant. "I was going to do what many have done, swallow it, make excuses, act like it wasn't that bad." He looked at the nearest camera. But it was. The crowd fell silent, the wind holding its breath. "Last night, I stood on a sidewalk, waiting for a ride. For that, I was questioned, accused, grabbed, cuffed, and punched by a man sworn to protect this city. He didn't see me. He saw what he wanted to see." James leaned forward. "And when he learned who I was, everything changed." He paused, letting that sink in. "Let's be clear. This isn't about my title. I wasn't hit because I'm the mayor. I was hit because I'm a black man in America. For some officers, that's enough." His words cut like lightning. Sarah stood beside him, face taut with emotion, hand steadying on the podium. James went on. "I've served this city as a judge, lawyer, public servant. I've shaken hands with governors, buried friends who fought for freedom. But last night, none of that mattered. Not my suit, my name, my position." He paused. "Only what I looked like." No gasps, no shouts, just heavy, honest silence. "This isn't about one officer," James said firmly. "It's about a system where a badge gives such confidence that escalation feels safe, because history says there's no consequence." He scanned the crowd. "That history ends here." Heads nodded. Someone whispered, "Amen." "I'm not just filing a complaint," James said. "I'm demanding a full investigation, transparency, accountability, reform. Not later. Not in 5 years, now. He stepped back. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for fair treatment for everyone, no matter their look, their home, or the time they're on a sidewalk. He walked away, Sarah and Michael behind him. Reporters shouted, but he didn't turn back. The message was out, and it couldn't be undone. The press conference didn't just ripple through Willow Creek, it exploded. By noon, James's speech was clipped into viral segments, each line more damning. All that mattered was what I looked like, looped on TVs and phones. Neutral officials were forced to pick sides. For once, people spoke out loud. Some hailed James as a hero, a truth-teller dragging the issue into the open. Others, tied to law enforcement, called him reckless, a divider. The city split, not over the incident, but because someone powerful finally said it. Inside City Hall, pressure built like water against a dam. Sarah fielded endless calls, legal aides, journalists, pastors, civil rights attorneys from nearby counties. Everyone wanted in, wanted to know what's next. The police department stayed quiet. No apology, just a vague note about an internal review. James wasn't shocked. He knew the tactic. Stall, let outrage fade. Discipline lightly. Reassign. Don't remove. Not this time. In his office, he stood at the window, watching citizens gather peacefully outside. Some held signs, others stood silently. Their presence spoke louder than chants. This wasn't a protest. It was a mirror of a city holding its breath too long. Michael walked in, phone to ear. "Third council member today," he said, covering the receiver. "They're asking how far you'll go." James turned. "All the way." "They're nervous, especially those tied to the union." "Let them be," James said. "Maybe they'll act." Michael ended the call, stepping closer. "Speeches won't cut it anymore." "I know," James said, grabbing a legal pad. "We need a plan." Across town, the Willow Creek Police Department held a closed-door meeting. Deputy Chief Laura Bennett sat at a long table, fingers steepled. High-ranking officers flanked her, all uneasy. The police union president, a burly man with a loud voice and a grudge, sat at the head. "This is political theater," he growled. "That press conference was a setup. He went national before we could investigate." Bennett didn't blink. "He went public because he was attacked. What did you expect him to do? Stay quiet?" "We don't have the full story," another officer said. "Body cam's not out. We don't know how it escalated." Bennett's eyes narrowed. "I don't need a camera to know what a bruise means." Silence fell. Quietly, she added, "I've been here 27 years. I've seen what gets buried." The union president leaned in, voice sharp. "If we don't back our own, we're done." Bennett met his gaze. "Maybe we need to rethink who our own are." Back at City Hall, Sarah entered James's office with a thick file. "Thomas Reed," she said, dropping it on the desk. James opened it. 3 prior complaints, all from black men, all dismissed. "None stuck," Sarah said. "Vague reports, missing footage, no witnesses. Familiar?" James leaned back. "They'll say this is different." Sarah nodded. "Because it happened to someone they can't ignore." He closed the file softly. "Good. I'm done with polite." An hour later, they entered the council chamber. The room, half full with staffers, reporters, and citizens, turned as James walked in. His presence carried weight. The bruises, the silence, the quiet intensity trailing him. He didn't sit or wait for permission. He stood in the center and spoke. "I need to address the council directly." The council president, an older man with thin white hair and tired eyes, nodded. "Go ahead, Mayor." James took a breath. "Last night, a city employee assaulted me. But this isn't about one man or one moment. It's about a department allowed to police itself, punish itself, shield itself behind closed doors. He scanned the room. We need civilian oversight, bias training, transparency. Now. A young councilwoman raised her hand. And if the union won't budge. James didn't pause. We take it to the people. Murmurs spread. Council members exchanged looks. Lines were forming, and some wanted no part of it. Outside the chamber, Michael waited, phone in hand. They're hitting back hard, he said. Anonymous officer quotes saying you're undermining the force. James smirked, humorless. Good. They're scared. Of you? Michael asked. James shook his head. Of change. That night, Willow Creek didn't rest easy. The police chief stayed silent. Officer Reed wasn't suspended, yet the city had shifted. People watched, talked, chose sides, and James was just beginning. By morning, it wasn't just Willow Creek watching. The nation was. News anchors led with it. Radio shows debated it. Civil rights groups from Philadelphia to Chicago called it a turning point. It wasn't just a headline. It was a symbol. The mayor who took a punch, stood tall, and forced a city to choose its identity. James's office became a war room. Calls poured in. Reporters, residents, legal teams, even wavering council members. He stayed calm, focused, reviewing body cam footage for the 5th time that morning. Sarah stood behind, arms crossed, watching the same scene loop. No doubt what it showed. An aggressive officer, no cause. James calm, polite, deferential. No threat, no crime. Just a man in a suit accused of nothing. Then, the punch. Sarah broke the silence. They can't bury this. They'll try, James said, pausing the footage as his body hit the wall. But time's up. He turned to Michael, on the phone with the communications team. Another press conference, James said. This afternoon. No waiting for their investigation. Release the footage today. Michael's eyes widened. Sure? Once it's out, no going back. James nodded. That's the point. At 2 p.m., City Hall's steps were packed again. Older, more diverse, more resolute. Signs waved. We see you, Mayor. Reform now. Justice isn't optional. The mood wasn't just anger, it was determination. James stepped to the podium, bruises darker, uncovered. He wanted them seen. No notes needed. I gave you the truth, he began. Now, see it for yourself. He nodded to Michael, who tapped a screen. A monitor lit up, playing body cam footage in real time. The crowd hushed. Reporters leaned in. Breaths held. They saw the officer approach. Questions turned to accusations. James tried to de-escalate, explain. Then, a uniformed man struck the mayor. A gasp rose. Someone cursed softly. James stood firm, letting the footage run. No cuts, no commentary. Just truth a city couldn't ignore. When it ended, he stepped forward. This isn't about revenge, he said. It's about accountability and change. He scanned the crowd. I filed a complaint, but that's just step one. I'm calling for Officer Thomas Reed's immediate suspension, a full public investigation, and a council vote for a permanent civilian oversight committee. His voice rose with purpose, not anger. If this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Applause erupted, steady, thunderous, born of shared pain turning to power. James stepped back, Sarah nodding, Michael exhaling. They'd done it. But inside City Hall, the backlash brewed. A police memo warned of the footage release. Some officers tore it up, others walked out. The union president planned a press conference, condemning the mayor's reckless overreach. The public didn't care about their words. They cared about what they saw, and it was undeniable. Deputy Chief Laura Bennett stared at a frozen frame of the footage, jaw tight. Her assistant knocked. He's here. Bennett opened the door. James stood, calm as ever. Mayor, she said, letting him in. The room was tense. The air conditioner's hum the only sound. "You've seen it," James said, sitting across from her. "I have," she replied, meeting his gaze. No defense for what he did. James didn't nod. "So why's he still on duty?" Bennett stood, pacing to the window. "The union's gearing up to fight. The chief doesn't want to look weak. Some here think it'll blow over if they hold out." James stood too. "It won't." "No," she said. "It won't." Silence hung. Then she turned. "I'll suspend him today." "Make it public," James said. No more silence. As he left, gears turned. Slowly, grudgingly. By day's end, Officer Reed was on unpaid leave, investigation pending. The press blared it. Protesters cheered, but James knew the fight wasn't over. The system stood, ready to hit back. The suspension was barely 12 hours old when the counterattack began. James, mid-coffee, saw Michael rush in with printouts, phone buzzing. "They're moving fast," Michael said. "Union president's on radio, saying the footage was skewed, and 40 officers signed a letter demanding your resignation." James set his coffee down, unsurprised. "They're circling the wagons." Sarah entered, tablet in hand, jaw tight. "It's not just the union. 2 council members went public, saying you're destabilizing the department. One's pushing an emergency vote to curb your power over police matters." James didn't blink. "They're scared. Scared people lash out." Sarah slammed the tablet down. "It's working, Dad. They're spinning this as an attack on law enforcement." "They're not scared of losing power," James said. "They're scared of losing its protection." Outside, a new protest formed. Smaller, angrier. Off-duty officers lined the police station, signs reading, "We stand with Reed. Don't politicize policing." Some masked, others brazen. They heckled reporters, drowned out interviews, sending a clear message. Inside City Hall, pressure boiled. Phones rang, emails flooded. Threats, veiled and overt, poured in. James's address leaked online. His car was egged. His bruises faded. But the inner wound deepened. He stood at a window, watching protesters across the square. Sarah joined him. "They're painting you as the villain in your own story." "I know," he said, "but villains don't stand in the light." In the council chambers, the mood shifted. Allies who cheered his courage days ago now avoided his gaze, muttering about unity, due process. Councilman Harrison, a longtime friend, approached after a budget meeting, voice low. "James, maybe ease off. Let the department handle it quietly." "Ease off?" James raised an eyebrow. "You've made your point," Harrison said. "The city's talking reform. Let that carry forward. No need to stir more." James's voice was firm. "Want momentum? Help me push it. Don't ask me to drop it." Harrison sighed. "You're pushing too hard. That vote they're planning, it's real. If you lose the council's trust..." "I'll lose it standing for something," James cut in. "I'm not backing down." That night, he held a town hall, not at City Hall, but a Southside Community Center, his home turf. The room overflowed with voters who knew what it meant to walk Willow Creek on edge. James stood. No notes, no podium, just an unused folding chair. "They want you to think this is about one man," he said. "One moment. One error. But it's not about one officer or me. It's about a system allergic to accountability." He locked eyes with elders, mothers, teens, veterans. "They want to scare us quiet, tell us to wait. We've waited decades. How long until justice only comes when cameras catch it?" A front-row woman spoke. "They say you're attacking police, making them the enemy." James nodded. "That's their lie. This isn't about attacking. It's about ensuring the right people wear the badge and the wrong ones don't." Applause spread. "If speaking truth makes me the enemy," he said, "I've been one for years." At the department, tensions boiled. Officers defied orders. Body cam use dropped. Response times slowed in some areas, quiet retaliation. Rumors of walkouts and blue flu swirled. Laura Bennett sat at her desk, a migraine pulsing. She'd walked a tightrope between truth and institution, and it was fraying. She called James. "I'm losing them," she said. "They were never yours," he replied. "They're loyal to a badge, not justice. They think I betrayed them." "No," he said. "They know you see them, and that scares them more than my speeches." She paused. "I can't hold this together much longer." James's voice was calm. "Then let it break. That's how we build better." By week's end, resignation calls hit national TV. Pundits talked recalls. Editorials praised his bravery, but critiqued his tone. Polls dipped, donors bailed, allies faded. But James stood firm. They could throw everything at him. He was still standing, because what they feared wasn't chaos. It was truth, and truth wore his face. The review board hearing dawned under a heavy gray sky, rain looming like tension. A municipal conference room became a makeshift courtroom, carrying a weight beyond policy, a reckoning. James arrived early, just Sarah and Michael, no press, no suit, just a navy sweater and slacks. He wasn't performing. He was testifying, showing a man, not a mayor. One humiliated, attacked, watching the system shield the perpetrator. A long table split the room. On one side, the review board, captains, administrators, a department attorney. On the other, Officer Thomas Reed, slouched, smaller than in the footage, not angry, but cornered. James sat across from him. They didn't speak for a minute. The board chair, a tall man with silver hair and a crisp uniform, began. "We're here to determine if Officer Reed's actions against Mayor James Carter violated department policy and conduct standards." James didn't flinch. Neither did Reed. Statements were read, the incident summarized, the body cam replayed on a small screen in the quiet room. No audience, no gasps, just uneasy silence, daring someone to speak. The video ended. The chair turned to James. "Mr. Mayor, this is personal, but as the victim, you may make a statement." James nodded, stood, and walked to the front, speaking plainly. "I never wanted this," he said. "Not as a victim, a symbol, or a man with a bruised face explaining why it's wrong." He glanced at Reed briefly. "I stood on a sidewalk. That's it. No threat, no crime. But I was treated like a criminal because, to that officer, my appearance trumped my words." He faced the board. "This isn't about a snap decision, a tough night, or bad judgment. It's a pattern of assumption, aggression, unchecked power. The only difference was who it happened to." He paused. "If you excuse this, you're greenlighting every future punch, every unjust cuff, every abuse that doesn't hit the news." His voice stayed steady, each word heavier. He sat. The chair turned to Reed. "Officer, your response." Reed sat still, hands folded, mouth tight, then spoke. "I was doing my job. Late night, closed store. He wouldn't show ID. I followed protocol." James stared ahead. Reed continued. "It escalated because he didn't cooperate. If he'd said who he was..." James cut in, sharp but quiet. "So it's my fault?" The chair raised a hand. "Let him finish." Reed swallowed. "I didn't know who he was." "You didn't need to," James said, locking eyes. "You needed to know what I was doing. I told you. But that wasn't enough. Because I wasn't enough." Reed's voice wavered. "I didn't mean..." "You didn't care," James cut in. "You thought I didn't belong there and used force, violence. That's not your job. That's abusing it." Silence fell. The board recessed. In the hallway, Sarah said, "They'll debate now. Footage, policy, framing it as procedure, not ethics." James nodded. They saw it all. They heard it. No walking that back. An hour later, they returned. The chair stood. After review, Officer Reed's actions violated use of force policy, de-escalation standards, and bias-based policing rules. James closed his eyes briefly. We recommend his immediate termination, effective today. No applause, no outburst, just finality. Reed stood, pale, and left without a glance. James watched, then turned to the board. This was right, he said, but it's not the end. It's the start of something better. Some nodded reluctantly, others with respect. As James left, light rain fell across the plaza. Reporters waited, but he didn't stop. The message was out, and Willow Creek was listening. Morning brought clear skies. The city had changed, not perfectly, but undeniably. Reed's firing rippled through Willow Creek. Some cheered, some raged, but silence was gone, a sign of cracks opening. James sat at his desk, eyeing a staff-drafted statement. Strong, polished, safe. Too safe. He pushed it aside, grabbed a pen, and wrote 3 lines. Officer Reed is terminated. This city deserves better. We'll ensure this never happens again. The press release went live, and social media roared. Clips from the hearing, James's words, video of Reed leaving. Shoulders slumped, lawyers at his side, became symbols. But James wanted structure, not symbols. He called an emergency meeting with the council, police commission, and Laura Bennett. The room buzzed, every seat taken. James stood at the head. The firing was needed, but it's reactive. We need proactive steps. He held up a folder. This is the Carter Initiative. Ambitious, uncomfortable, but what this city needs. Council members shifted. James continued. 3 pillars: permanent civilian oversight, mandatory de-escalation, and bias training, and a public dashboard tracking complaints and outcomes. Harrison raised a hand. The union will fight every word. Let them, James said. Bennett spoke up. We need buy-in from good officers who want to serve. We're not targeting them, James said. We're shielding them from those who stain the badge. They need to speak up. He scanned the room. This isn't anti-police. It's pro-trust. Later, James and Sarah met the press for a candid talk, not a speech. A Willow Creek Tribune reporter asked, "Is this the end of tension with the department?" James leaned in. No, it's the start of an honest relationship. Tension isn't failure. It's friction, where change sparks. Another asked, "What about claims you're causing division?" I didn't cause it, James said. I exposed it. Now we choose. Ignore or fix. The next day, James hit the streets. No cameras, no stage. He visited overlooked neighborhoods, barbershops, bodegas, churches. People didn't mob him. They shared quiet thanks, stories, pain. An elderly man in a wheelchair said, "You gave me hope, a black man in power who didn't back down." James smiled. I back down, just not when it matters. The Carter Initiative moved fast, fueled by public pressure. The council scheduled a vote within days. The union fought back. Ads, op-eds, billboards screaming, "Let police," claiming James's reforms endangered safety. He didn't bite. He showed up, and people listened. Vote night packed the council chamber. Farmers, teachers, nurses, teens with signs. James stood outside, hands in pockets, hearing the city's murmur on the brink. Sarah joined him. "Ready?" He smiled faintly. "Is anyone ready for this?" She met his gaze. "You were born for it." The roll call began. Votes came, some bold, some shaky, under a public finally finding its voice. The initiative passed, 8-1. Cheers erupted. People stood, wept, hugged. James didn't celebrate. He exhaled, shedding a long-carried weight. In a quiet corner of City Hall, Michael found him gazing at the plaza. "You did it." James shook his head. "We did part of it. Now we make it last." Sarah joined, smiling. "What's next?" James looked at the city, flags rustling. "Next, we ensure no one fights this fight again." In that moment, between his past and the future he'd built, James didn't feel like a mayor. He felt like a builder of something new, lasting, true. Willow Creek looked different, not in buildings or streets, but in its pulse, the way people saw each other, saw James. A shift had happened. 3 weeks post-initiative, headlines faded, cameras left, but the real work began. James sat in his office late, notes piled high, legal pad nearby. Outside, the city glowed under sodium lights, no longer distant. Even in quiet, he felt its awakening heartbeat. Pushback came. Lawsuits loomed. Anonymous letters arrived. Council members grumbled about budgets. Morale. It didn't matter. The people weren't looking away. They held the city accountable. That was everything. That morning, James met the new oversight committee. 11 residents, Black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old, from every district. No badges, just lived experience. They spoke without permission. Honest. James listened. When it ended, Tara, a single mom, said, "This is the first room where my voice felt real." James nodded. That was the goal. Later, he spoke at a North Side high school to seniors, some who'd marched weeks before. No speech, just answers to raw questions. Why didn't you fight back? How do we fix a system we don't trust? What if you weren't mayor? James didn't dodge. I didn't fight back because I'd be a statistic, not a headline for change. You don't have to trust the system now, but you must demand better tomorrow. It resonated. With them. With him. Back in his office, he read Sarah's note. "Dad, you made history. But more, you made a path. I love you." Her handwriting, strong, impatient, made him smile. His phone buzzed. Michael's voice. "Press is outside. Still doing this tonight." James stood, smoothing his jacket. "Yeah." He walked City Hall's empty halls, past stoic portraits of past mayors, some hiding secrets. None had been treated like a criminal while holding office. James had, and survived. Outside, the air was crisp, early fall's chill signaling change. The press was small, local, familiar faces, no national glare. Perfect. At the podium, he spoke. "I'm closing this chapter not with a speech, but a promise. I won't forget the feeling of powerlessness, even with a title of power. I'll listen more than I speak, especially to those without mics or offices." He paused. "I promise to make this a turning point, not a footnote." Shutters clicked. Heads nodded. He stepped back. No applause, no spectacle. Just resolve. Inside, Michael waited. "No formal statement for the year-end?" James smiled. "That was for them. The work's still on." Michael hesitated. "There's talk of what's next. State Senate, maybe governor." James shook his head. "Let me fix one city before a state." In his office, a new file held a handwritten letter from an anonymous retired officer. "You were right. I saw it for years. Stayed silent. I'm sorry. I'll speak now if you'll hear me." James read it twice, adding it to a Voices folder. He didn't leave early. He stayed, watching the city's flickering streetlights, the world moving forward. Tomorrow was uncertain, but he wasn't chasing legacy. He was living it. One policy, one meeting, one raw moment at a time. In his office's stillness, past midnight, James saw clearly. Change didn't come from titles. It came when someone stood firm, long enough for others to rise. Sometimes, the riskiest move is to assume, to judge someone by their look, their spot, their clothes. This story shows assumptions have costs, heavy ones. It also shows something stronger. Dignity needs no permission. Mayor or mechanic, retired or raising kids, You deserve to be seen for you, not someone's snap judgment. Here's the truth. Standing up against injustice isn't pride, it's principle. For those who've seen History Loop, this story pushes us not to quiet down, but to grow louder, using our voices for progress, not just protest. Change doesn't start in halls or courts. It starts when everyday people say enough and stand firm. If this hit home, if it made you think, like subscribe, share. Someone out there needs this story too. Your voice, your action, could spark the change. Thanks for watching.